Ladies and gentlemen, please stand to welcome the arrival of His Excellency Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. Distinguished guests, please be seated. His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong will now witness the symbolic exchange of 13 documents. We will now exchange the following set of documents: the France-Singapore General Security Agreement and the terms of reference of the senior officials dialogue between the National Security Coordination Secretariat and the France General Secretariat for Defense and National Security. May I now invite His Excellency Jean-Noel Barrot, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, and Mr. K. Shanmugam, Coordinating Minister for National Security and Minister for Home Affairs, to exchange the documents. Thank you, Ministers. We will now exchange the next set of documents: the Declaration of Intent on Enhanced Defense Cooperation, Letter of Intent on Defense Artificial Intelligence Cooperation, and the amendment to the Administrative Arrangement on Defense Technology Cooperation between the Ministry of Defense and the France Ministry for Armed Forces. May I now invite His Excellency Sébastien Lecornu, Minister for the Armed Forces, and Mr. Chan Chun Sing, Coordinating Minister for Public Services and Minister for Defense, to exchange the documents. Ministers, please. Thank you, Ministers. We will now exchange the next set of documents: the cooperation agreement between the government of Singapore and the government of the French Republic for the development of peaceful uses of nuclear energy, the MOU between the National Environment Agency and the France Authority for Nuclear Safety and Radiation Protection, and the Declaration of Intent in matters of cooperation in technical and vocational education and training between the Ministry of Education and the France Ministry for National Education, Higher Education and Research. May I now invite His Excellency Jean-Noel Barrot, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, and Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, Minister for Foreign Affairs, to exchange the documents. Ministers, please. Thank you, Ministers. We will now exchange the next set of documents: the Joint Statement on Collaboration on the Safety of Artificial Intelligence and the Singapore-France Roadmap on Deepening Cooperation in the Digital Domain between the Ministry of Digital Development and Information and the France Ministry of Economics, Finance and Industrial and Digital Sovereignty. May I now invite Her Excellency Clara Chapaz, Minister Delegate for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Affairs, and Mrs. Josephine Teo, Minister for Digital Development and Information, to exchange the documents. Ministers, please. Thank you, Ministers. Next up, we will exchange the extradition agreement between the government of the Republic of Singapore and the government of the French Republic. May I now invite His Excellency Jean-Noel Barrot, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, and Mr. Edwin Tong, Minister for Law and Second Minister for Home Affairs, to exchange the documents. Ministers, please. Thank you, Ministers. We will now exchange the final set of documents, the Singapore-France Enhanced Framework Agreement between the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore and the France Directorate General for Civil Aviation, and the Singapore-France Enhanced Maritime Partnership between the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore and the France Directorate General for Maritime Affairs, Fisheries and Aquaculture. May I now invite His Excellency Eric Lombard, Minister for the Economy, Finance and Industrial and Digital Sovereignty, and Mr. Jeffrey Xiao, Acting Minister for Transport, to exchange the agreements. Ministers, please. Thank you, Ministers. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the exchange ceremony. We will now commence the joint press conference between His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. You may wish to put on the headphones located on your seat for the English and French interpretations.
Thank you all. May I now invite Prime Minister Lawrence Wong to deliver his remarks, please.
Your Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to welcome President Macron to Singapore. He generously hosted me when I visited Paris last year, and I'm happy for the opportunity to reciprocate his hospitality here in Singapore. We had a visit to Lau Pa Sat last night to experience Singapore's hawker culture and local food scene. We had good discussions over dinner yesterday and again at our meeting this morning. The President's state visit is a timely one. It comes as we mark the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between France and Singapore. France was amongst the first countries to recognize Singapore's independence in 1965. We remember this gesture of solidarity and we thank you for it. Our ties have grown from strength to strength since then. France was the first European country with whom Singapore established a strategic partnership in 2012. And this partnership laid the foundation for our close cooperation across many areas in defense, trade, cybersecurity, education, research, and culture. In today's uncertain world, it's even more important for like-minded countries like France and Singapore to work together. And that's why President Macron and I have agreed to upgrade our bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. This will deepen our cooperation in existing sectors and expand our collaboration in new areas like decarbonization, digitalization, and AI. This will be Singapore's first comprehensive strategic partnership with a European country, and it reflects the high level of trust between our two countries and the potential for us to achieve even more together. The number and range of agreements we witnessed just now reflects the breadth and depth of our comprehensive strategic partnership. But let me just highlight quickly a few key areas. First, on defense. That has always been a pillar of our relationship, and we are very grateful to France for hosting an RSAF training squadron at Cazaux Air Base for over 25 years. We are also happy to support French military deployments in the Asia-Pacific, including port calls by French naval vessels. And under the new partnership, we will enhance cooperation in other areas, including deployments, defense technology, and critical and emerging technologies. We will also reinforce security cooperation, including by establishing a senior officials dialogue. Second, in the economy, especially in trade and investments where we already have very strong ties. Under the CSP, we will do even more to boost economic cooperation and increase connectivity, such as by leveraging on the France-Singapore Digital and Green Partnership and our two new agreements on aviation and maritime transport. Third, our cooperation in emerging and frontier technologies. This has been expanding over the years, and we will include new areas like AI, cybersecurity, and quantum. We will deepen our cooperation in the digital domain, and we will continue to expand research collaboration through our Joint Committee on Science and Innovation. Fourth, in energy and sustainability, we already have robust exchanges, but we will build on that to do more. And our 2 new agreements on civil nuclear energy cooperation will help Singapore tap on French expertise in this field as we explore the possibility for civilian nuclear energy in Singapore. Finally, people-to-people exchanges are another important part of our relationship. The French presence in Singapore is growing, and likewise the Singapore presence in France. Our cultural ties are growing too, and we hope to build on these robust linkages to do more together. Under the CSP, we will strengthen our collaboration between our institutes of higher learning, deepen cooperation in technical and vocational training, and promote more cooperation in the arts and culture. Besides closer bilateral ties, both France and Singapore will also work closely to strengthen multilateralism and the rules-based global order. President Macron and I had good discussions on how we can do so. France is a long-standing partner of ASEAN, and we welcome its strong interest to step up engagement of our region. And we also agreed that the CPTPP and the EU can do more together to boost two-way trade and investment links and to reinforce the principles of our rules-based trading system. So I thank President Macron for the excellent discussions over these past 2 days. He is a partner and a friend of Singapore, and we deeply value his commitment to advancing the Singapore-France relationship. I look forward to working with him and his team to bring our bilateral ties to greater heights in the coming days.
Thank you, Prime Minister. May I now invite His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron to deliver remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Dear Lawrence, merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre, cher Lawrence, Mesdames, Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames, Messieurs les ambassadeurs, Mesdames, Messieurs les parlementaires, Mesdames, Messieurs, je tiens à vous remercier, Monsieur le Premier ministre, et à remercier Monsieur le Président de la République pour votre accueil chaleureux. Et c'est un immense honneur pour ma délégation, mon épouse et moi-même, d'être parmi vous depuis hier, avec pas simplement des partenaires, vous l'avez dit, mais des amis de confiance. Et cela depuis 60 ans. Et cette confiance remonte en effet à l'avènement d'un Singapour indépendant et à la relation exceptionnelle que le père fondateur de Singapour, an outstanding relationship launched by the founding father of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. And as we commemorate the 10th year of his death, I meant my thoughts go to this outstanding figure. His vision was built on modernity, tolerance, and political will, and that should still be a source of inspiration against the temptation of inward-looking attitudes, protectionism, and violence. This is still a source of information that we should not neglect. I'm very pleased, and I would like to thank you, Prime Minister, for welcoming me yesterday for this walk that we took for discussions and the very fruitful meeting that we had this morning. Allow me to go back to a few things that you said, including the fact that we both share trust the idea of an efficient multilateralism. We will go back to these issues within the context of the Shangri-La dialogue, but let me say how much there is a community of views between Singapore and France on this. First of all, we're very grateful for the stance you've taken from the very beginning of the war in Ukraine by taking measures against Russia, by supporting Ukraine. And this shows, as was the case with your predecessor and yourself, that this war, of course, is existential for the Europeans and their security, but it is also a matter for the entire world. And we cannot allow might is right to reign. We, first of all, need an immediate ceasefire and to support the international order. Of course, we also talked about the situation in the Middle East. at the moment, it is imperative that the Palestinian people be able to benefit from humanitarian aid, but we are also convinced that there is a way to a robust and lasting peace that guarantees security for all Israelis and Palestinians, and such is the purpose of the process we'd like to launch on the recognition of a Palestinian state with preconditions that are described over the past few days, and I could answer questions on that. As a country of the Indo-Pacific region, France also stands by Singapore to remind of the importance of the respect of international law in the region, in particular when it comes to the freedom of navigation, without which there would be no trade and accordingly no prosperity. And while Singapore is participating in the G20 as an observer, and given that France will be chairing the G7 next year, we would like to strengthen international partnerships, advance the reform of international financial institutions, and the Pact for the Prosperity of People and the Planet, which we launched in 2023 and which Singapore joined, very much embodies this ambition, which is that no country shall have to choose between tackling poverty and tackling climate change. This multilateral action is rooted in what is now a global strategic partnership, like you said, that we signed on the occasion of this visit and applies to a broad range of sectors. We'll be cooperating regarding the civil nuclear energy to contribute to the development of Singapore's expertise. We'll share our skills when it comes to decarbonated energy and electric connectivity, such as the purpose of the Asian power grid. And there are also some major projects we've just signed to contribute to the decarbonation of the energy of Singapore. This is what we're also aiming at doing in the space industry, the cyber sector, and others. Will reinforce our cooperation in the air sector as well, with the new project for the Singapore airport, a leading airport, global airport. And like you said, Prime Minister, we're so proud of that we've had since 1998 the trust of Singapore to train your pilots. And I'll have in mind, of course, this project in the air sector, but we can also provide some maritime capacity, and we are having some intensive discussions on intelligence, artificial intelligence, and in the field of intelligence as well. I will not comment all the agreements that are being signed. Of course, you mentioned the importance of cultural ties and people-to-people relationships. We will be signing some further agreements this afternoon. They're in the hands of CEOs and representatives of investors. And this global strategic partnership indeed embodies our attachment to sovereignty. And Temasek committed to coming to France, and they did last year, and we will be meeting some other business leaders and investors this afternoon, and I also would like to intensify reciprocal investments. To conclude, allow me a European message. By visiting Southeast Asia all along this week, we began making concrete the immense potential for cooperation between your region of some 700 million inhabitants and a Europe of 450 million inhabitants. And France will always support the efforts of the European Union, aiming at strengthening the links with the countries of ASEAN, in particular in the economic field with new trade agreements. We also would like to strengthen the bonds thanks to the Trans-Pacific Partnership and open a dialogue, a comprehensive dialogue with the partners in this partnership in the fields of innovation and others. Europe can contribute its skills, its know-how, and contribute its domestic internal market. And like you said, the CPTPP is a huge potential, even broader, and the link between Europe and ASEAN and CPTPP is very clearly a way to open an efficient multilateralism, but also this strategic autonomy in which we both believe. Prime Minister, thank you for hosting us, for the quality of our discussions, and for your trust, the trust that feeds the agenda between France and Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Now we will begin questions. We have limited time to the press. Let us begin with French media first. AFP, s'il vous plaît.
Bonsoir. Bonjour, Monsieur Francesco Fontemaggi de l'agence France Presse.
Question
Monsieur
from
le Président, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Mr. President, Prime Minister, President, you said you will be opening the Shangri-La dialogue and present your geopolitical vision later on today. Could you tell us more about the key message you intend to share? And since the beginning of this visit, you've been talking about a balance and a credible power, but given what is happening, what took place in Kiev, and that you've been threatening Russia with massive sanctions, you said you were doing this with the United States of Donald Trump, but so far we haven't seen much as a consequence. Thank you very much. Well, I'm here first and foremost to say that France is a stakeholder in the Indo-Pacific region. We have more than 1 million fellow citizens in the region. We have a presence, a strategic and military presence, 8,000 military staff in the region, and we also contribute to joint drills, and we intensified all of that over the past few years. Since 2018, we've launched an Indo-Pacific strategy. We turned it into a European one, and it means that there is a third possible path. It's neither submission nor conflict with China, but it is about complying with international law and the interest of all of the regions, powers in the region. I believe this is a very powerful leverage to align with many countries of ASEAN, and we fully acknowledge the centrality of ASEAN and of the whole region. And as a matter of fact, France has increased the number of its partnerships with many countries in the Indo-Pacific region, from Indonesia to India, the United Arab Emirates. We opened up to our Rafale and submarine offers, and over these past 60 years we've have connections with Singapore. We're training Singapore's pilots, but we also have a diplomatic, economic agenda, innovation in artificial intelligence and sustainable development for all of that with the region. So the world is more and more uncertain, and the rules of the game are sometimes challenged by the more powerful countries. But we believe that we can share the same reading, understanding of the world, but also act together. And we believe this is a structuring element. I do not think that what happened in Kiev or after is a matter of credibility for the Europeans. I think it is a credibility test for the Americans. We, the Europeans, have had the same coherent approach for 3 years. We're sanctioning Russia, we're supporting Ukraine, and we do not want any escalation leading to a third world war. We built this coalition of the willing since February, and rightly so, and that's very coherent with what I just said about the Indo-Pacific region. We want to do more. And as a matter of fact, we want to tell the Ukrainians, we're supporting you, we want to build a sustainable, a lasting peace for you. In Kyiv, a few weeks ago, together with Prime Minister Starmer, Chancellor Merz, and Prime Minister Tusk, and together with the Coalition of the Willing, by way of a video conference, we said we're supporting the American initiative of an unconditional 30-day ceasefire on land, in the air, and at sea. And it's been, in March, agreed upon by President Zelensky, and we stand ready to work together for a lasting and robust peace and offer Ukraine with the necessary guarantees. And we, the Europeans, also stand ready to contribute to sanctions that would deter Russia if Russia failed to come to the negotiation table, and if Russia didn't bring any credible ceasefire proposal. But what we've seen over the past few weeks is show that Russia is not ready. And I note that President Trump over the past few days very much condemned the strikes led by Russia. And I recently talked to President Trump, who expressed his impatience. So the question is, what do we do now? We stand ready, and we're waiting two answers. Confirmation by Russia, either that it's not ready for peace, or a clear push in that direction, and depending on the answer from Russia, a renewal of the American commitment as expressed in Kyiv. The Europeans are constant and reliable, and I do not see any weakness in that. And I think the same credibility and reliability comes from our partners in the Indo-Pacific. We stick to open trade cooperation and compliance with the rules. And we are partners that stand ready to commit with Singapore and the countries of the region to contribute to collective security, to have an innovation framework that complies with our rules and international order. And I see a lot of coherence in this, from Europe to the Indo-Pacific, including Singapore today.
Thank you. Next question, Channel News Asia, please.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Good afternoon, President Macron. My name is Geraldine. I'm from CNA. My question is for Prime Minister Wong. At the cabinet swearing-in ceremony last week, you said that Singapore would be a steady and constructive partner in a world of shifting alliances. So in the context of this bilateral relationship between Singapore and France, what can Singapore offer, and what is Singapore expecting from France in return?
All countries will engage one another on the basis of wanting to advance their national interest. This is to be expected. But between countries, we often can find common ground and shared interests. And that's Singapore's approach, that instead of focusing on differences, we focus on our areas of common interest and advance them together. And certainly between France and Singapore, we have many common areas of interest, from security to the economy to energy, and many of the areas which we talked about earlier. So what Singapore will bring to the table as a constructive partner is that we will always be a steadfast supporter to advance these areas of shared interest together in order to achieve win-win outcomes for both sides. And the agreements we signed just now attest to that. The deep and significant levels of trust that has been established between both countries at the leadership level, across the officials, and even at the people-to-people level attest to that, that we will always be reliable, credible, and a steadfast partner to France and to other partners as well, in thinking of ways in which we can achieve win-win outcomes. Between France and Singapore, I think there is another important area where there is shared interest, which is that we both believe deeply in multilateralism and a rules-based global order. We know that this global order is shifting. What we have seen before in the decades past is starting to change. No one knows what the new order will be in the coming years' time, so we are in a period of transition. And in this period of transition, it's important that like-minded countries work together to put in place the outlines and the pillars of a new order that will ensure stability and continued shared prosperity for countries around the world. That's what France and Singapore are doing. And we are doing it not just bilaterally, but we are also working through some of the initiatives we discussed just now, for example, enhancing EU-ASEAN partnership, strengthening the links or potentially forging a new partnership between the EU and the CPTPP. These are significant moves which I believe will help to further emphasize the principles of free trade, of the rules-based trading system and will ensure that we are able to put in place the new pillars of multilateralism that will eventually emerge in the years to come.
Thank you. Next question, TF1 LCI.
Bonjour Monsieur le Premier ministre, bonjour Monsieur le Président, c'est la Bougri pour TF1 LCI.
Mr. President, my question is about Gaza. All along this week, you reiterated your position to double standards. While you're asking for massive sanctions against Russia, the EU is currently considering revisiting its association agreement with Israel. Should we do more? What about sanctioning Israel? And do you confirm that you will be attending the conference in New York? And do you intend on that occasion to recognize the state of Palestine? Some say it's a moral necessity. What do you have to say? Thank you very much. All will depend on the choices to be made by the government of Israel in the coming days, and it is very clear today that we cannot allow the situation to continue. The humanitarian blockade which is prevailing today means that the situation is unbearable on the ground. A few weeks ago, I went to the border together with President Sisi, and I could see the situation for the wounded, which the Egyptian hospitals are taking care of. But some initiatives that were taken in and happening in to March are no longer possible. And the whole of the humanitarian aid coming from all around the world is being blocked by the Israeli army. This is not acceptable. And today, we need to provide water, food, medication. We need to allow those wounded to exit Gaza. And unless there is a proper humanitarian solution in the coming hours and days, of course, we will have to strengthen our diplomatic position, stance. And of course, it's also about respecting human rights, and we may have to apply sanctions, just like we did on an individual basis against some Israeli settlers who targeted civilians on occupied Palestinian territories. But I still have hope that the Israeli government will change and allow humanitarian aid. And indeed, France will contribute to putting together this conference in New York in June, and I had a very important discussion with the Prime Minister here and our cooperation in the context of this conference. I also had a very fruitful discussion with President Prabowo of Indonesia, who made public his position a few days ago. And it's very important because he said that when Israel recognizes Palestine, Indonesia will recognize Israel, which is not the case. And what we're building and will be working on in the coming weeks is, of course, a political answer to the crisis. And yes, it is a necessity, because today, beyond the humanitarian tragedy, what is at stake is the very possibility of having a Palestinian state that is being challenged, and we can see that some are trying to make it impossible. So what we're defending is a political outcome to the situation. There is the Hamas terrorist attack on the 7th of October, which France condemned. And of course, Israel has a legitimate right to defend itself against Hamas, which is a terrorist group. We are still fighting for all the hostages to be set free, but there cannot be only a security answer. It also shall be a political answer. So freeing the hostages, the demilitarization of Hamas, reforming the Palestinian Authority, with ending up with a Palestinian government that recognizes Israel. This is the only outcome for the security of all. And it's the only way to find peace for the region. It's not only a moral duty, but a political necessity. And anyone who cares about the right of peoples to decide about their future, and for all of those for which the Israel security matters, it should end up working together in that direction. This is what we're trying to do. And the date of the 18th of June should be an important date in this respect.
To what the President had said. I know the question was addressed to him, but I should also highlight Singapore's position on this matter. We've always said that Israel had a right to defend itself. But unfortunately, Israel's response has gone too far, and its actions have caused a terrible humanitarian disaster. And the restrictions imposed on the delivery of humanitarian supplies are completely unacceptable. In our opinion, it may even be a likely breach of international humanitarian law. So it cannot be justified. We join countries around the world to call for an immediate ceasefire, for the unhindered delivery of humanitarian aid, for the protection of civilians, and also for the return of hostages. Of course, beyond the current crisis itself, Singapore also supports the right of the Palestinian people to their own homeland. This has to be done as part of a negotiated two-state solution, because that is the only way for a comprehensive, just, and durable solution to this long-standing Israel-Palestine conflict. So there have been international efforts on both fronts, on the ceasefire, the return of hostages, as well as on the roadmap towards a negotiated two-state solution, including the efforts by France and Saudi Arabia for a conference next month. We will participate in this. We will join with the international community to watch such a durable solution.
Thank you. We have time for a last question from Lianhe Zaobao, please.
Hi, good afternoon, President Macron and Prime Minister Wong. My name is Yun Fang and I'm from Lianhe Zaobao. So the first part of my question is for President Macron. Given France's close ties and alignment with the US on various geopolitical issues, how is France looking to present itself as a third force and alternative in Southeast Asia amid the US-China rivalry? And what specific actions will France take to enhance its presence and influence in the region? And for PM Wong, what role do you see or hope to see France playing in the region amid this geopolitical situation? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are close allies with the United States of America, you're right, but we are not dependent on the United States of America for our defense capacities, and France is quite an exception in Europe for that, because we developed our own capacities through decades for our energy and for a full range of questions. It's not totally true for all the Europeans, but we are working hard in order to strengthen our strategic autonomy, and it's core for the French and the European agenda. This is why, given this specificity, and given the fact that through our overseas territories, we are part of the Indo-Pacific, because from New Caledonia, French Polynesia, Wallis and Futuna, Réunion Island, Mayotte, and other small territories, we are part of this region. We have 1 million inhabitants living in this region. We have more than 8,000 soldiers, a lot of common exercises with a lot of countries of the region, and a specific presence and specific partnerships with a lot of countries of the region. We are clearly an Indo-Pacific player. And what we can offer is precisely the fact that being part of an alliance, but having this independence, we do believe in the same values. We believe in a rule-order basis, and we believe in open trade. And we believe in this liberty of sovereignty, to quote a former Australian Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. And in such a context, I think we have quite a unique position. And we are very lucid. We are not part of this superpower. We are neither China nor the US. We don't want to depend on none of them. We want to cooperate with both as far as we can. And we can cooperate for growth and prosperity and stability for our people and the world order. And I think this is exactly the same view as a lot of countries and a lot of people of this region. So we want to play together in order to do so. How to de-risk ourselves, and how precisely to engage with ASEAN, which is clearly central, but all the Indo-Pacific members, in order to have more stability, de-risk ourselves from these big players, and work very closely together to have this third way possible?
Well, Singapore and ASEAN's view is that we want to have an open and inclusive region in Asia. We want a region that is not dominated by any single power, that does not have exclusive arrangements with any single power. We want to embrace comprehensive engagement with all parties and embrace win-win arrangements rather than zero-sum competition. That's Singapore's approach, that's also ASEAN's approach, and we believe in the collective interest of all the parties in this region. So while a lot of focus has been about US and China, in fact, there are other major powers to engage. France, as the President says, is a Pacific power. France has significant capabilities across a wide range of different areas. And we have long-standing relations with France bilaterally, but we also welcome France to do more, not just with Singapore, but also with the rest of Southeast Asia. And we are very happy that the President had a very good visit this time, not just to Singapore, but prior to this, to Vietnam, to Indonesia. And he will be the first European leader to speak at the Shangri-La Dialogue later this evening. So we welcome that enhanced engagement of Southeast Asia by France, but importantly, we also welcome enhanced engagement by Europe. And France leading the way for the rest of Europe to engage Southeast Asia and ASEAN in a more significant way, I think is an important strategic imperative for us. And we can engage across a wide range of areas, on defense, on security, on the economy, on energy, on all the things that we talked about. So the bilateral initiatives that we have between Singapore and France can be a pathfinder for Europe and ASEAN to do more together as well. And by having these additional links for all the major powers to have stakes in Southeast Asia and Asia, to work together, to find win-win arrangements, we believe such a configuration makes for a stabler configuration in Asia. It will reduce the chances of conflict, and it will maximize the likelihood for continued peace and shared prosperity amongst all the parties.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the joint press conference between France and Singapore.